The heavy leather folder was shoved deep inside the side pocket of my husband's expensive golf bag. I was simply moving his clubs from the hallway into the garage. The zipper caught on the thick material. I pulled the folder out. It featured a massive gold foil crest pressed into the dark leather. It was the unmistakable, highly prestigious logo of the Wellington Academy. My 10-year-old daughter, Ivy, had spent 2 grueling years studying with private tutors to pass their rigorous entrance exams. It was the most elite, impenetrable preparatory school on the East Coast. I opened the folder. The acceptance letter inside was not addressed to Ivy. It was addressed to Hunter. Hunter was my sister-in-law's remarkably spoiled, deeply unmotivated 12-year-old son. Attached to the welcome letter was a finalized, stamped receipt from the Academy's bursar office. It confirmed a massive, unrefundable wire transfer, $150,000, paid in full for the next 3 years of private tuition. I stared at the long string of numbers printed at the bottom of the receipt. The routing code was perfectly, sickeningly familiar. It was the exact internal routing number of Ivy's dedicated, high-yield educational trust. The trust I had funded entirely with my own corporate bonuses over the last decade. My pulse did not race. The temperature in the garage seemed to drop several degrees, settling into a cold, clinical freeze. I traced the ink of the forged authorization signature at the bottom of the page. My husband, Garrett, had copied my handwriting with terrifying accuracy. Garrett was a man who operated on the path of least resistance. He hated conflict. He possessed a desperate, pathetic need to please his older sister, Blair. Blair was the undisputed matriarch of their toxic family dynamic. She lived in a constant state of fabricated luxury. She leased a massive SUV. She wore clothes covered in aggressive designer logos. She possessed a severe case of main character syndrome. She firmly believed her son Hunter was a misunderstood genius. The reality was starkly different. Hunter was a bully who routinely failed basic math and threw iPads at his teachers when he was bored. Blair had been obsessing over the Wellington Academy for months. It was the ultimate status symbol in her superficial social circle. She bragged constantly at family dinners about how Hunter was a legacy fit for the school. She conveniently ignored the fact that she was drowning in credit card debt and could barely afford her monthly car payments. I walked back into the kitchen. Garrett was sitting at the island, mindlessly scrolling through sports highlights on his phone. He looked up and gave me a warm, completely hollow smile. He thought he had executed a flawless maneuver. According to the notes hastily scribbled on the back of the folder, he planned to let Blair take Hunter to the exclusive orientation day next week. Then, he was going to stage a fake phone call with our bank. He planned to gaslight me. He was going to claim the bank made a catastrophic routing error and accidentally drained Ivy's account to pay a random vendor. By the time the investigation concluded, Hunter would already be enrolled, and the Academy's strict no-refund policy would lock the money away forever. He assumed my quiet, organized nature meant I was gullible. He severely underestimated the absolute, unyielding ruthlessness of a mother protecting her child's future. I worked as a senior compliance director for a global logistics firm. I tracked missing cargo across international borders for a living. Tracking a fraudulent wire transfer across town was a minor administrative exercise. I placed the folder back in his golf bag exactly as I found it. Silence is a much sharper tool than a screaming match. The next morning, Garrett left for his office. I sat at my dining room table and opened my encrypted laptop. I did not call the police. A standard police report would trigger a massive, slow-moving bureaucratic nightmare. It would freeze the funds in legal limbo for years. I needed a surgical, immediate extraction. The Wellington Academy was a deeply conservative, historically rigid institution. They protected their reputation with the ferocity of a military state. Their board of ethics was notorious for actively destroying the social and financial standing of anyone who attempted to defraud their admissions office. I compiled a flawless, undeniable digital dossier. I gathered the timestamps of the wire transfer. I pulled the IP logs from our home network proving Garrett initiated the transaction. I secured the original legally binding formation documents of Ivy's educational trust, explicitly naming her as the sole beneficiary. I bypassed the standard admissions email. I sent the encrypted dossier directly to the personal inbox of Wellington's chief legal counsel. I labeled the subject line, "Hostile, fraudulent enrollment, and forged capital transfer." The response was incredibly swift. I received a secure phone call less than 2 hours later from a man with a voice like crushed gravel. The Academy's legal team was livid. They did not just view this as a family dispute. They viewed it as a direct, insulting attack on their financial integrity. Blair had submitted an application claiming she was the primary funder, lying on federal financial disclosure forms to secure the spot. The lawyer offered to reverse the wire transfer immediately. I declined. I instructed them to hold the funds in a secure escrow account. I authorized them to proceed with their internal disciplinary protocols. I wanted Blair to feel the absolute, dizzying high of her fake success before the ground vanished beneath her designer's shoes. The week passed in a state of tense, silent anticipation. Blair posted relentlessly on her social media. She uploaded photos of Hunter's expensive new uniform. She posted passive-aggressive quotes about leveling up and leaving toxic, unsupportive people behind. Garrett liked every single post. He walked around our house with a sickeningly smug posture, completely unaware that he was a dead man walking. Saturday morning arrived. It was the highly anticipated new family orientation day at Wellington. It was a mandatory, ultra-exclusive event. The Academy's grand Gothic auditorium was filled with billionaires, tech founders, and generational wealth. Blair wore a pristine, tailored white suit she definitely put on a high-interest credit card. She walked through the massive oak doors of the Academy like she owned the entire campus. She held Hunter's hand, loudly introducing herself to the incredibly wealthy parents, desperately trying to network her way into their social circles. Garrett was there to play the role of the supportive uncle. I told him I had a massive corporate emergency and had to spend the weekend at the office. I was not at the office. I was sitting quietly in the very back row of the dark auditorium. I wore a simple black trench coat. I blended perfectly into the shadows. The head of admissions, a severe woman with silver hair, took the stage. She tapped the microphone. The ambient chatter of the city's elite instantly died. She did not start with a warm welcome. She held a thick manila folder. Her expression was completely devoid of warmth. "Before we begin our campus tours," she announced. Her voice echoed sharply off the vaulted ceiling. "The Wellington Academy operates on a foundation of absolute, uncompromising integrity. We do not tolerate deception. We do not tolerate financial malfeasance. And we certainly do not tolerate the submission of forged legal documents to secure a seat in these halls." The wealthy parents shifted uncomfortably in their velvet seats. The tension in the room spiked. Blair sat in the third row, looking incredibly confused. She leaned over and whispered something to Garrett. Garrett's arrogant smile faltered slightly. Blair Sterling, the head of admissions, stated coldly. Her eyes locked directly onto the third row. "Please stand up." Blair froze. She looked around the massive room. Hundreds of extremely influential people turned their heads to stare at her. She slowly stood up. She smoothed the front of her white suit, trying to project a confident, aesthetic aura. She thought she was being called out for a special recognition. "Will the security personnel please escort Miss Sterling and her son to the front exit?" the head of admissions commanded. 2 large men in dark suits stepped out from the side aisles. They walked purposefully toward Blair's row. Blair's confident facade violently fractured. The color drained from her face. "So what is going on?" she demanded. Her voice cracked, echoing loudly in the silent room. I am a fully paid, enrolled parent. You have my tuition. We have a heavily documented dossier proving you utilized stolen capital from a minor's trust fund. The head of admissions corrected her. Her tone was like ice. You submitted falsified federal financial disclosures. You are currently trespassing on a private, secure campus. Your son's admission is permanently revoked. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. The city's elite stared at Blair with profound, unadulterated disgust. They were looking at a blatant, desperate fraud. Garrett stood up quickly. He tried to distance himself from his sister. He looked physically ill. A thick bead of sweat rolled down his temple. The head of admissions turned her icy gaze to him. "Mr. Sterling," she added, "the Academy's legal counsel has already notified your primary banking institution regarding the unauthorized wire transfer. Your personal accounts have been frozen pending a formal fraud investigation. Our legal team will be serving you with a civil suit for institutional deception before you leave the parking lot." Garrett's knees visibly buckled. He grabbed the back of the velvet seat to stay upright. His entire fake reality was mathematically erased in front of the most powerful people in the state. Blair let out a high-pitched, hysterical gasp. She grabbed Hunter's arm. She tried to yell at the head of admissions, but the security guards smoothly intercepted her. They did not gently guide her out. They firmly marched her down the center aisle. She walked past the rows of billionaires. She walked past the tech founders. Her tailored white suit looked pathetic and cheap under the harsh auditorium lights. She was publicly, totally humiliated in the exact room she had desperately wanted to conquer. Garrett stumbled down the aisle right behind her. He looked like a hollow shell. He looked frantically around the room. His eyes locked onto the back row. He saw me sitting in the shadows. He stopped walking. The remaining color vanished from his skin. He realized I didn't just find out about the theft. He realized I had orchestrated the entire devastating public execution. I looked at his terrified face. I did not smile. I did not blink. I simply tilted my head a fraction of an inch. The security guard pushed his shoulder, forcing him to keep moving toward the exit doors. I waited until the auditorium doors closed behind them. I stood up and walked out a side exit. I stepped into the crisp, cool morning air. The manicured lawns of the academy were perfectly green and silent. I walked toward the visitor parking lot. I saw Blair standing next to her leased SUV. She was screaming at Garrett. She was crying, her expensive makeup running down her face in dark streaks. Hunter was sitting on the curb, complaining loudly that he wanted to go home. Two men in sharp suits were handing Garrett a thick stack of legal documents. I unlocked my car. I did not walk over to them. I did not need to deliver a final, dramatic monologue. You cannot buy a legacy with stolen currency. The market always corrects itself. I started my engine, turned the steering wheel, and drove out the wrought iron gates, leaving them entirely bankrupt in the center of their own toxic delusion.